Okay, welcome to our first video of our RV life. Thought this would be an interesting way to tell people about what happened. Lots of other people do the whole RV thing too, but this is our story. So we've had our first rental. It went really well. It was 5 nights and 6 days. And we rented from Southwest RV up near Louisville, Texas. Experience there was great. I'll post links to the reviews that I did for them down below. So last week, March 1st, we drove up there, loaded up the bus, and then had our driving lesson. I was the only one that drove this time. Susan drove a little bit on parking lots, but didn't feel like getting out on the road because we really didn't have a good place for her to do her lesson. So we'll do that next time. I did pretty well. I only ran over a couple of curbs, and I scraped one tree on the right-hand side, but it was small branches. Didn't leave much of a mark, if anything at all. Other people had already done that to this bus, so it was really hard to tell. So after that lesson, we started the trip. The first hour was kind of a little white-knuckly, partly because I just wasn't used to it. It was a little bit like learning to drive again. So I had to pay attention to the big mirrors on the sides, and I had to pay attention to where I was in my lane, and I had to pay attention to my speed, which I found anytime I wasn't really thinking about it, I was slowing down. One of the things that I've decided I want in our bus is a HUD, at the very least to show me speed where I'm looking out the windshield and I don't have to keep looking down and so on and so forth. After about the first hour, kind of got into a nice little groove. Took us a couple hours to get down to near Temple, the Dancing Bee Winery, where we were going to boondock for the first night. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, that basically means you're camping overnight without any hookups. And they allowed us to stay in their parking lot overnight, which was great. It was a good experience, using the generator and setting everything up in their gravel drive. Also had another couple that was staying there. Didn't get a chance to meet them, but they had a nice little trailer, and got to wave to them while I was walking Chip the next morning. So we got there and had a wine tasting, and bought several bottles of wine. Then had a nice little dinner and went to bed, and our first night was a good experience. Woke up the next morning, had a nice long walk with Chip in the grounds of the winery, then went back to the shop and bought some more goodies. In fact, there was pineapple mango salsa that I highly recommend, that we're still working our way through. Let's see, what else? Lots of blue bonnets. They didn't have blooms, but they did have lots of plants, and I figure probably about now or maybe another couple of days they'll start seeing some blooms, and they're just going to be all over their property. So once we were done there, back on the road, the only place where we kind of got a little concerned was going through Llano. They have a 14-foot 3-inch bridge, and the bus that we were in, the top height was 13-foot 5. So we're like, okay, well, we should make it, and as you can see, we did. Another couple hours and make it to Fredericksburg, and we pull into our very first RV park. Little concern, well, okay, concern is the wrong word, but took some care. Susan was careful to mention, hey, trees, remember those things? And I didn't really think I'd be able to fit in the lane that they wanted me to stop in, and you can see that I sort of stayed over the yellow. Fortunately, everybody who left and came while we were getting checked in had room to go around the other side of the building, so it really wasn't much of a problem. So we got our assignment, pulled in. The best thing we took with us for that moment anyway were radios. Susan was able to guide me in, and then we parked, set everything up, got hooked up to power and water and sewage, and that mostly went well. The water had a bit of a leak. We were able to fix that the next day with some thread tape, and the sewer connection also had a bit of a leak, and that was disconcerting. Fortunately, I found that by emptying part of the gray tank, and that's the tank that the sink and the shower feeds into. So it's slightly dirty water, but it wasn't the black tank. But when we went to dump, I was able to make a bit of a gasket and get that good enough. After we were all set up, we decided to go to a nearby tortilla shop and get some tortillas so we could have some nachos and tortillas, because at this point it was Friday, and Friday is margarita night. That was a bit of a fail. So we got there at dinner time, and they were packed. So next time I think we'll call ahead, order, and just go pick up if we have to go at dinner time. And I'll mention the name and everything down below and so on and so forth. So while we were gone, we also left the camera running because I wanted to see what Chip would do. He didn't do so hot. Well, we had the shades closed, so he couldn't really see out. And we left some music running that he's not used to hearing. And he kind of squeaked and barked a little bit. Didn't bark too much, but you can hear him squeaking a lot in the video, which actually I've muted the audio so you don't have to hear him squeak. It's very, very sad. Everything was good that evening. Good experience in the bus again. Didn't have any problems except with the heating unit, and it's only because there was no manual and the interface was a little weird. We never did quite figure it out. It's like there were two zones, but only one of them heated and the other one heated and cooled, and we weren't sure which zone was which, and so it would have been nice to have a manual next time. So the next morning, I had a nice walk around the grounds again with the boy, ran into the goats, which we'd seen the previous day. Chip was able to almost go nose to nose with a small one, but both of them were like, I'm not too sure about this. So that didn't go very far. Then we took a lift into Fredericksburg, spent the day there with the boy. That worked out really nice. We bought all sorts of goodies, had some good food. There's review links down at the bottom as well. And then when we got back, we decided to take a longer walk without Chip so we could get a little more exercise in, and left the camera running again. Some of you will have seen the video that we took then. We left the windows open, didn't turn the music on, and he had a pretty good time just looking out the windows and looking for us to come back, which is kind of what he does most of the time anyway. So there's a link to that video down below. And then when we got back, Susan set about to weaving. She brought a loom, and I tried to get the wireless set up in the bus so that we could watch some movies that I'd brought with us, thinking that we would Chromecast it to their TVs. That was a total fail. And I'll have more details about that later. So that was unfortunate. So I'll have to figure that out before we get into the next bus, our bus. Uneventful evening. It was just easy to set up. It was comfortable. That's one thing that we noticed and mentioned a couple of times to each other as we were sort of going back over the trip and talking about, what did we like about it. And the fact that the bed was comfortable made a huge difference. If the bed had been uncomfortable, this trip would have been a disaster. But as it was, even though we ran into little things here and there, like the hookups that I mentioned a moment ago, when we're driving, some of the drawers would tend to fall open because the catches weren't as tight as they could be. And, it's all little stuff. But all of that would have added up into a bad experience if we hadn't been able to sleep. But surprisingly, the bed was very comfortable. Okay, so the next day, we dumped the black tank, dumped the gray tank. That worked mostly okay. I don't think I got everything out of the black tank. But it was enough to get us to our next destination, which for that day was Comfort, Texas, followed by Lake Whitney. So we trundled down to Comfort and went into the tinsmith's wife and the loom room. I had to let Susan go into the first one by herself for a while because there was a cat. And Chip was fine. He doesn't see cats as prey, at least until they run away. And then he's like, ooh, I need to chase it. It sort of runs like a squirrel. So I wandered about town for a little bit while she shopped. The tinsmith's wife is just, it's a great place. Lots of yarn, lots of everything. Susan found some really good stitch markers that I needed to finish a hat. So I'm using those to finish my hat. And then after a while, we met back up at the loom room after I'd put Chip back in the bus, which we'd parked nearby. Also a really neat place. Lots of looms. I'll see if I can put some pictures on here. For brunch, we went to 814, a Texas bistro. We were thinking about going to another place down the road, but I don't know, the menu just didn't strike us as all that wonderful looking. And when I looked at 814, I don't know, it just seemed homier. and the menu items seemed yummier looking. So we stopped there. Really friendly waitress whose name I unfortunately didn't get, but she brought out a nice bowl of water for Chip, and we chowed down on omelets and a really neat dish that I'm not even going to pronounce because I'll butcher it. And we initially asked for some hot sauce, thinking, pretty much every place you go to, any sort of egg dish needs a bit of hot sauce. Nope. This did not need anything extra. So if you're in Comfort, Texas, definitely make a point to go to 814. It's a nice little place. People are friendly. The food is good. And we left late, unfortunately. It was around 3:30, I think. And we were going to have to drive, I think, 2.5, 3 hours, maybe 4, don't remember now, to get up to Lake Whitney. So we knew we needed to book it, because if we got there after 10, we weren't getting in. So we're booking it, and then Susan realizes, wait, we need more wine. And we ended up going into the Farmhouse Vineyards tasting trailer called Tipsy. It's a really cute Airstream trailer that they've rebuilt. And at first we thought they weren't open because it looked kind of dark, but the door was open. So we went in, had a great time with Erica. She's really friendly, very helpful, let us taste a number of different wines, and we left with several bottles, one of which we're going to use to christen our bus when we finally buy one. We're not going to break the bottle across the bow. We are going to drink the wine. We'll probably break the glasses they gave us, though. They're nice enough glasses, but they're fairly large, and we just got rid of some large glasses that weren't fitting in our cabinets very well. Plus, we're downsizing. So anyway, we kept going. It got dark, and I got to find out what it was like to drive one of these in the dark, and it really wasn't that bad. I do wish that there had been some sort of black cover for the dash, because anytime Susan needed to turn on a light, it just lit up the dash, which created a whole bunch of glare in the windshield. So in our own bus, we'll figure something out there, and then also make sure that we can dim the cockpit lights and so on and so forth. But otherwise, it went pretty well. We hit Whitney at about 9:30. Nobody was there. They had already closed up the office, which I think closed at 4, pretty early. But they had instructions so you could get your own spot and check in the next day. It was no big deal. So we looked at the map, found a spot, drove to the right area. Susan got out with a radio again and helped guide me in to the spot. And we decided that spot was too small. There were also some trees that were kind of touching the side of the bus. So we went to the next spot. Seemed fine. We hooked up power and went to bed. Actually had a little bit of a dinner and then went to bed. And then the next morning, got up, walked Chip around the camp. He loved that. By this time, Chip hated the bus. The bus made every noise. There's really only two. Both noises that Chip just hates. Hissing. So if he's doing something and we want him to stop, we can just go "Sst," and he will stop and look at us like, okay, I won't do that anymore. And if he's really actually doing something we want him to really stop, we can make a very loud hiss. And it's kind of like we, I don't know, nudged him with our foot or kicked him, but we would never do that. The problem is this bus, every time you do anything with the brakes, put your foot on the brake, release the parking brake, whatever, it makes a loud hiss, and he goes crazy. And then everything in the bus makes the beeping sound that Chip hates. I don't have a way to reproduce it. Maybe I'll add some audio during edit. When you turn the bus on, the dash controls make the beeping noise. When you hit the turn signal makes the exact beeping noise, and it's nothing like a regular car, which is fairly subdued sound. And I think maybe they do this because the higher pitch will cut through road noise a little better. The induction cooktop, anytime you touch any of the controls, it makes that noise. When you turn power on to the house, the microwave coming on makes that noise. So we're going to have to figure something out different for our own bus, see if I can modify those sounds, because if he has to deal with those all the time, he'll go crazy. So anyway, he was really happy to get out of the bus and wander around Lake Whitney. So that day we really just spent relaxing, and we really wished by the end of this trip that we could have stayed another 3 or 4 days. It was beautiful, the weather was good. It's a little overcast when we first arrived, but became sunny halfway through the full day that we had. Walked around the lake, saw some hawks, really big hawks, and they flew very close to us. I wasn't overly concerned that they would come after Chip, but he was a small, edible-looking creature, so we did stay close to him. Susan spent time weaving. I did a little bit of knitting in our little camp area. We met some people that came in about midway through that day who had a couple of schnauzers. So we all got to meet, and our dogs met, and they went, yeah, your dog. Had a great night. Hated to pack up the next day and head out, but it was our last day, and we had to turn the bus in. Booked it on home. All told, we drove about 700 miles. I averaged around 10 miles a gallon, and we had to fill up the bus once, effectively. It was good. We can't wait to do it again. We're busy shopping, trying to find the bus that fits our budget and our size needs. And hopefully soon we'll have a walkthrough of the one we pick. I'm hoping it won't take weeks and weeks and weeks to find the right one, but we'll see. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll tune in next time.